Good evening. Welcome to my YouTube channel. Today I have the pleasure of having with me here Cindy Peterson, a dear friend of mine. Cindy is a licensed mental health counselor. She has worked as a clinician and manager in community-based and inpatient mental health settings since the late 80s. She's a lifelong advocate for trauma-informed, holistic, person-centered, and non-coercive approaches. She now works as a dialogic trainer and therapist in New York State. She also identifies as a family member and expert by experience. So, Cindy, we met each other in the GFDA, right?
Yes, global families. And I just, before we get started, I want to thank you for having me as a guest. It's really an honor.
I am pleased. It's an honor of mine to have you here in my program. The honor is mine.
Thank
So, how are folks there in GFDA? Are they doing well?
yeah, so global families for dialogic approaches. We've been going, I guess, close to 6 years now. And I think we started during COVID when the idea of staying in touch on Zoom was gaining popularity. And it's really been a source of inspiration and support, I think, for all of us, but for
Yeah.
me in particular.
For me too. For me too.
Yeah. So that's how we met.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Because I had some peer support groups here in Brazil, which in which I behaved in a similar way that the dialogic approach advocates.
Hmm.
So fortunately, we have this initiative that started in Finland and now is spreading to other countries, which is something very good, very positive for all people with mental health problems, I think.
Yeah. No, I am a big fan. I have spent decades of my life kind of wondering what really helps. And the idea seems so simple, but also so powerful to really
Yeah,
create space for people to feel heard and to hear each other and to feel connected,
I,
even in our, kind of darkest moments.
absolutely. I fully agree with that. Shall we talk a little bit about your life story?
Sure, that'd be
So,
fine.
you identify yourself as having had some mental problems in your life. How do you think this began? What are the root causes of your problems? Uh,
I mean, I thank you for the question. When I was a teenager, I think my quote unquote problems started, although I'm going to say they probably had deeper roots than that, going back to my early childhood.
uh-huh.
And I think when I was going through it, I didn't have the perspective I do now. So I'm
Yes,
speaking as an older adult at this point.
yes.
Um, I definitely know that started to feel very unhappy when I was 16, 17. Um, I became preoccupied with what I was eating, my
Mm,
weight. My
mm,
weight was first too light, then too heavy.
mm,
I was exercising a lot and also unhappy a lot. So I ended up going to, I think, first see a therapist. And then at one point, my parents took me to an emergency room and I
oh,
ended up
yes.
meeting a psychiatrist. And looking back, what I remember is I was talked about and I wasn't asked any questions that I can
Mm-hmm,
recall. I heard my parents talking to the psychiatrist about kind of, she seems very unhappy, crying a lot, not wanting to go to school.
mm-hmm.
She's been a good student up until the last few weeks. And so that was kind of the very beginning of my experience with mental health, with the mental health system, long time ago now. But it actually taught me more than I realized at the time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I do share many things with you also. I also felt sad and isolated in my adolescence, and I experienced this. I was not questioned. There was no dialogue with me. The dialogue was between my family and the psychiatrist.
Yeah.
I did not participate, and I feel that you didn't participate also in the decisions.
Yeah. I mean, I just, they were adults and I was
Yeah,
still kind of a kid and I
yeah,
was trusting that they knew what they were doing. But I think looking back, um, it would have been helpful to ask me, what do I think's going on? And even the psychiatrist, I don't think was asking my parents, what do they think is going on? I remember a lot of talk from the psychiatrist. I remember the term chemical imbalance. I remember the term, mood disorder, major depression,
yeah.
eating disorder. Um, it was definitely focused on me. I don't think there were many questions about what was happening
Hmm.
in our family, in my life.
Yeah,
And there also wasn't questions directed at my parents or me about, what did we think would be helpful,
yeah. In those days, there was already the DSM, that famous book of.
right? The Diagnostic and Statistical Manual.
Yeah,
Yeah,
did it exist already in those days?
it did. I think, since then it's been updated several times
Uh-huh,
and, kind of a way to categorize diagnoses, which, my understanding as a mental health professional now is that, they're descriptive.
uh-huh.
But the diagnoses describe what a person is going through, what symptoms they may be having, behaviors, thoughts, feelings, but don't necessarily explain the cause, or we don't always know the cause. We just know that people have these struggles and we try to, you know, categorize
Yeah,
them to help with services and I guess research and insurance and other things too. Um, I've really come as a professional and a
mhm.
person with experience to think it's important to ask people what they think
Yeah,
is going on and, just kind of very open-ended what happened to you.
yeah.
Um,
And I think mental health is something of a community subject. It is about us, it's about our families, it's about our friends, it's about the healthcare professionals. It is a community thing together. It's a collective problem, in my view.
yes, I would agree with you. I think, I mean, I actually have more questions than ever, I guess, about what it is and what leads to it and what the best way through is, but I definitely think it needs to be a collective question
Yeah,
and include dialogue with people that are part of the situation.
because we're all in the soup. I like to say we're all in the same soup. Our
Yes,
families and everybody. There's no such a thing as a. There's that famous phrase from a writer. I don't remember the name of the writer now, but he said, "No man is an island." And
yeah,
I like this phrase because it's something collective. Yeah?
yeah. No, I
And
think, excuse me, go ahead.
no, please go on.
Well, I think we live in relationships as human beings.
Yeah,
And if you kind of just look at one person apart from their family and their social network and their friends, you really don't see the person. You just see a part of who they are. And I think when I was in the system many decades ago as a teenager, I kind of felt like I was being examined and looked at, and I didn't know it, but I was being labeled and treated as very separate from what was happening, in my home, in my
yeah,
school, in my community, and there was a lot going on.
yeah. Perhaps we could say that they want to assess us, but they do not make so many efforts to access us. Also, I mean,
I love that. Yeah,
yeah,
I think assessing and connecting is actually very important and also healing in itself. When a person feels, I know in my own life, when I feel heard, and then when I start to hear a little bit about what other people are saying, it starts to build bridges. And I think that would have been really helpful. to me at the time when I was a young person. And since then, I've had a lot of therapy, worked in the field for many years. And also, I have four young adult kids, and a couple of my kids have had some issues. One had some pretty significant issues starting about 12 years ago, and we were able to use this dialogic approach as a family um, with him and with all of us to talk about what was happening and what would be helpful. And I really think he had a different experience than I
Mhm.
did. Um, you know,
Yeah, but we can see that you recovered so well. You followed a career. You had a family. You're now this likable person talking to me and to everybody. You recovered so well. What was the secret of your recovery?
well, thank you for saying that. Some I have my days, but I'm going to generally agree with what you said that, I feel like at this point, I've been fortunate to have many things go well in a full life. Um, I think for me, having my own questions and then kind of at a very young age, coming out of my first experiences with the system as a teenager, I was really like trying to figure out what helped and what didn't help.
Yeah.
And it got me interested when I went to college, then in studying psychology and becoming a therapist. And then I went to work first in a state hospital in Missouri.
Hmm.
And again, I was wondering what was happening with the individuals we were serving and what was helpful and what was not helpful. And I did notice that people didn't ask them.
Hmm.
I think
Yeah.
this was then by then the 80s. And there really wasn't a dialogue happening with patients or clients at that point. It was later, maybe into the 90s, that I became aware of what's called the peer movement or the
Hmm.
survivor movement,
I
people
see.
who'd had their own experience. And so anyway, I think asking questions was
Asking
really
questions.
important.
To ask
And I think
questions.
coming to find the voice within me and then
Hmm.
also get curious about the voices of others, not only professionals, but
Hmm.
also the people, that were going through the services.
Yeah. A Socratic path, just like me, asking questions.
Yeah, so did you do that?
Yeah,
Would,
me too. Of course, I did that too. Yeah.
yeah,
And I understand, Cindy, we both live in two countries. You live in the United States, I live in Brazil. These two countries nowadays, they are framed as a very competitive societies. You see, we are competing all the time, for money and for everything, for money, for status, for whatever. There's a constant competition. I can see this here in my place, and I feel this is the same in the United States. Shouldn't
I
we
would.
have a more collaborative society, Cindy? Don't you think so?
Well, I know we've talked about this over the years, Joelle, and I agree with your ideas completely.
Hmm.
Um, I do think that when we're kind of set up to feel this pressure of outdoing the next person, and in order to be okay, we have
Yeah,
to win, or we have to compete, or we have
yeah,
to make money, or we're
yeah,
never enough.
yeah.
Um, it kind of goes against what human beings need to feel safe and secure and peaceful and
Loved.
um, and also in community. It really separates us from our community if we feel like we have to compete.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
so
Because, for example, Cindy, I would be open to this. I am ashamed when I meet someone of my past. For example, suppose I meet a person I met in my adolescence. It is difficult for me. I feel ashamed
mm,
because I do not work, I don't earn money, I have not married, I don't have a car, whatever. So it's difficult for me. You see, sometimes when I meet some person of my past, and this person may start talking about how is my life, it's not so easy for me to say that I have schizophrenia. You see, because things are framed in this manner. It's very competitive. So It is difficult. If we have a society more collaborative, perhaps it would be easier for me and for other folks who have the same problem. It would be easier to say, oh, I developed some problems. You see?
Yeah, it makes me sad hearing that, Joelle. I feel like you have brought so much to my life and to the people,
Oh, thank you
that
for that, for these words.
also know you. And I mean, you're a writer, you're doing this show, I think this is one of my first interviews. And
Really?
I really feel like you understand things from the inside out. It feels not just an interview, but really like a relationship. I mean, we're friends, and
Thank you.
um, I think the willingness to share so openly about lived experience
Yeah.
of going through the system is something a lot of people hide, a lot of people don't do. And I think when, I met you and we both had, kind of shared that we'd had our own experiences, there was an immediate trust
Hmm.
that this is going to be collaborative. This is not going to be
Yeah,
a,
of
competitive
course.
friendship.
Yeah.
Um, and that's even a clash oxymoron, competitive friendship. I
Yeah.
felt like it's going to, we were going to be looking out for each other. And I wish the world was more like what I found in circles of peers, people
Hmm.
who do things. And I'm going to say that includes both lived experience myself, but also family members,
Hmm.
my neighbors, friends, people who share what they've been through, the good times and the bad, help me feel a
Yeah,
sense.
I think I can follow. There are societies, I think the way society is framed, both in my country and your country, is a bad way. But there are good people everywhere. That's also true.
I agree. And I mean, I don't know what you think, but I do think when I'm in a community of peers, and
Hmm.
that is a big word, but where you can feel it. You can feel when people are curious about who you are, respect you because you are who you are,
Yeah.
and humble. There's a curiosity and a humility that we can only know our life. And I really, back to the mental health system, would wish for more of that from the whole system, from the professionals, from
Yeah.
anybody that is part of providing services to people.
Yes, of course. We should have a more collaborative world, but we should
Oh,
not. But we should not be so pessimistic about the human being because there are good humans.
oh,
It's
I'm
part.
I'm with you. I think the goodness in each person brings out the goodness in the other
Yeah.
person. If
Yeah.
we feel competitive, we're more likely not to share.
Yeah.
I know for me, when I first went into the system as a professional, I was both taught in graduate school, but also felt from my own experience working, in my various workplaces that it was not safe or right to
Hmm.
share my own lived experience. So I didn't for at
I
least 10
see.
years. And it wasn't until I met other peers, some of the first peer professionals that I was aware of were people like Dan Fisher, who, introduced himself. He was a pretty, he is a pretty well-known recovery expert. He's a psychiatrist, had his own lived experience. Pat Deegan,
I see.
Howie the Harp. Howie the Harp was one of my earliest heroes, I think, in the peer movement. He had had all kinds of lived experience and actually really pushed for peers to have a place working in the system.
Hmm.
And I think he helped in New York State, helped coin the term peer specialist.
Hmm.
So, I mean, I have not found anything more helpful than people who get it, people who've
Yeah.
really walked the walk.
Yeah. And I think there's not so much secret, not so complex, so difficult. It's about being sincere. It's about being open. It's about being showing solidarity. I don't think we need to enroll in a philosophy course or whatever, to learn how to be a good listener or a good peer. I think
Yeah.
I think it goes from the heart. You just show solidarity and not many sophisticated thoughts, I would say.
Yeah. I mean, as we're talking, I'm getting curious about, your answers to some of the questions
Yeah.
that you're, asking me. So, um, if you would like to share at any point.
Oh, of course. Yeah, I fully agree with you. I think when you were talking about being open about your own life, I think I understand because I also identify myself as a reserved person. I do not go around to the city telling everybody what I am. I'm more reserved.
Hmm.
But at the same time, I think we need some people with whom we can open. We'll not be
Yeah.
open to everybody, but we need a small circle of friends to whom we can open ourselves. I
Yeah.
think so.
Yeah. And I really respect each person's choice. I like what you're saying about making the decision about when to be open with who. And I
Yeah,
actually tend to be reserved that way also. Um, Although, talking about personal things as we are right now,
yeah,
while we're recording,
yeah,
show, I guess has felt important to me too, just in terms of kind of spreading the word that
yeah. I should
so many
think, yeah,
people who do so much
because,
stuff.
yeah, because at the same time that I understand this thing you have of being more reserved. I feel that also in my life. But at the same time, I'm trying to do something I believe in. I'm trying to produce, to express myself. This channel is for me a means of expression. I'm here telling what I feel, telling my, you could call it an artistic production of mine.
I have great admiration for this and for
Thank
your
you.
other
Yeah,
artistic, you know,
yeah. I don't aim to share intimacies with whoever. It's not this way. But we need to spread a beautiful word, a beautiful energy. We need to make the world know what we have learned in our lives. We lived
yeah,
something important in our lives, and we need to share that.
yeah. No, I think it's important that people who, like both of us, who've really moved on and moved through life,
Yeah,
talk about what we've been through. Because I
yeah,
think sometimes when you're in one of those difficult places or a family's in a difficult place,
yeah.
they may not see what's possible.
Yeah, we need to send a message of optimism to people. It is
Yeah,
possible. The diagnosis is sad, the diagnosis is difficult, but it's not the end of our lives. There is life beyond that. It is possible to recover. You are a perfect example that it is possible to recover. It's possible to interact with people in a pleasant manner. It's possible to make friends. It's possible. You see, you are the living proof that it's possible to overcome this diagnosis.
well, I would say the same about you, Joelle.
I know that. Yeah. Yeah. So now, as a therapist, I understand as a therapist, your life experience was very useful, very productive for you. You can be a better therapist since you had experienced all of this in your life.
Yeah, I think initially, like I was saying, I didn't talk about my own lived experience, and
Uh-huh.
I didn't think it would be proper. It was,
Uh-huh.
maybe crossing boundaries or
Uh-huh.
not a professional thing to do.
Uh-huh.
That's really shifted though in the last 20, 30 years, most of my career. And now I think the idea is you can really refer to your own lived experience if you're really clear how it might be helpful to the people that you're connecting with and you're serving.
Yeah.
Um, and you don't have to share anything if you're not comfortable. But I think sometimes what I've noticed is what we were talking about a while ago is that trust.
Yeah.
I remember I also have family experience as a mother, and
I know
I
this.
remember I had a position maybe 15 years ago where I worked with families. who had young adult children going through difficulties. And I would share, that one of my sons really went through some hard times. And there was almost an immediate kind of relaxed response from often the mother, father, whoever was there, who seemed, what they said is, I feel like you won't judge me now. I feel like you get it. And, I do think being able to share lived experience in our work, as long as we stay professional and don't share more than we're comfortable or more than would be helpful to the people we're serving. To me, it's like really a gift.
Yeah, I can follow you. Yeah, it's interesting because schizophrenia is such a difficult condition because worldwide people are ashamed. This shame that I feel happens everywhere. I have noticed this. There are some places in other
Yeah,
countries where people hide, the family hides the person. You know that you probably know this about this. There are some parts of the world when a person develops schizophrenia, that's such a shame that the
yeah.
family keeps the person inside the house and the person doesn't get out of the house anymore because they don't want anybody to see that there's a new person in that family, you see. So shame is so difficult. Shame is one of the most difficult things in our lives. And
I,
schizophrenia brings shame. It's very difficult.
well, I think there's so much stigma, misunderstanding. I mean, the labels can be helpful, but they can also hurt when
Yeah,
society judges. And that's where I really think we need to open up the dialogue.
yeah,
And, there's strength in numbers. So the more of us that come out and say, hey, I went through this, I was diagnosed with that. There's life beyond a diagnosis. I'm a person, not a label.
yeah,
So maybe I have labels, maybe that can help my doctor, but that's not, you're Joelle. Um, but I appreciate your honesty because I also think there is stigma, and
yeah,
I
there
think
is.
and people feel it.
It is difficult. Yeah, it is a reality. We have to deal with that. It's a reality.
Yeah, and I think, I mean, in my mind, that makes recovery a lot more difficult.
Yeah,
When, it's almost like we talk about recovering from a mental health condition or a mental illness, but yet we're also recovering from stigma, misunderstanding, shame,
yeah,
and what I mean, that's not helping.
yeah. It's terrible. It's terrible. I remember that I spent some days in the intensive care in the hospital. It
Hmm.
was so difficult because that was because I tried to suicide. And it was so difficult, Cindy, so difficult because the nurses in the intensive care, they had a tremendous prejudice against me, you see. So
Prejudice in what way?
in,
Prejudice.
in many ways, they thought, I don't know, it was something very wrong that I had done against their
Oh,
moral principles, against
wow.
their way of believing what life should be.
And
So it was so difficult
I mean,
because they had this tremendous prejudice with me there. I was fighting
yeah.
for my life. I was in a very difficult condition, fighting for my life, and they laughed. They made
Oh,
jokes. They
that's,
laughed. It's
boy,
horrible.
makes me so sad. It feels
Yeah,
so so wrong.
yeah. Who are they to judge me?
I,
What do they know? Are they what happens? From where comes all this arrogance? Why
those are
that?
those are, kind of real brutally hard questions, but
Yeah,
important questions, Joelle.
yeah,
Like, why treat people like this? That's, the opposite of humanity.
yeah. I think that this is one of the main questions I bring here, and you know this, we have talked about this before. I think this is one of the problems of our society. We have forgot collaboration, we have forgot love, we have forgot
Yeah.
understanding. It has
Well,
become,
I feel it here with you, and I felt it, and we still meet global families.
I know that. I want to meet you again. I want to see you again, you all.
Yeah,
I want to
please come.
participate.
I
Yes, I'd love to
missed
see
you
you
since
all.
you've been busy with all the other things you're doing,
Yeah,
which I appreciate very much, but I'm have my own selfish wish that
I
you'd come.
miss I miss you all very much, and I miss your son also. I met your son. He's such a fantastic person. I miss him also.
Oh, and no, he thinks highly of you as well.
Well, thank you so much.
And it's again, I've lived through enough decades to know like what a privilege it is to be able to speak to you and be friends with you when we're on different continents,
Yeah,
different countries, and I
yeah.
appreciate.
That's an interesting thing about schizophrenia. It happens everywhere. You know,
Yes,
all human cultures, they have people with schizophrenia. It's something to think about. It happens in
yeah,
Brazil, it happens in the United States, in Africa, in China, in India, everywhere. It's
yeah.
something to
I
ponder
mean,
about.
but I will say, the World Health Organization did some studies maybe like 20 years ago now.
Mm-hmm.
Repeated the studies, I think, 3 times because they couldn't believe the results.
Uh-huh.
But what we found is the recovery rates where people got back to a full life after having a diagnosis of something, like schizophrenia or more serious mental health condition, were twice or 3 times in what we would consider countries that were less developed than those in the West.
Yeah, I
Or
know the statistics. Yes.
yeah, and so the question is, why is that? What
Yeah.
is it that they're doing right? And that sometimes, even though we have hospitals and medication and therapists and those things can be helpful, what's missing that they have?
Do you
And it's
wanna,
like it's the social connections.
yes, I would, that's my opinion. It's because it's community-based, the treatment. I know some of these numbers. I think Colombia, the rural areas of Colombia have very interesting numbers. The rural areas of Nigeria and the south of India. I think in
Mhm.
these three regions, they have very good numbers of recovery in schizophrenia. In my
Yeah.
opinion, I cannot know the answer, but I would guess it is because they live in a community-based society.
Well, and I think instead of isolating the person and
Yeah,
labeling them and creating this kind of extra layer of stigma and mistreatment sometimes, which should never happen, but does happen, doesn't happen in the same, I think it's much more the family comes together to try to care for this person who's going through something. And the care really works.
yeah, it does.
It it doesn't necessarily make everything change and there can still be challenges, but the challenges are part of the person and the person is still part of the family. And that's really what I wish for everywhere. I will say, this approach called open dialogue developed in Finland, and there's versions of it like peer-supported open dialogue in the
Yeah,
Odessi project in London. It's very much about having a team of professionals that are trained to facilitate dialogue come
yeah.
and meet with the family. Sometimes they do it on Zoom, like we're talking now. Other times they might come in person to the family's home or the family comes into the clinic, whatever is the most comfortable for the family and
Mhm.
the person going through the crisis. And by facilitating this dialogue, what they're finding are recovery rates are much
Yeah,
higher
I know
than
that. Yeah,
with what you and I both went through when we got taken to the
yeah,
emergency room.
yeah. And it's so interesting because the dialogic approach was developed in northern Finland, in Lapland, which is
Mhm.
actually a region of Finland poorer than than Helsinki in the south. The capital
Yes,
is in the south, but they did this in the north of Finland where they have less resources than in the capital, and even then their numbers are much better than those of Finland, than those of Helsinki.
yes. I'm 100% with you. And I think any day now there's going to be an article out in the Lancet Psychiatry about the
Mm,
Odessi project, where they
mhm.
took what they did in Finland and did it in London and the
So the
UK.
Audacity, so let's the Audacity project is done in London according to the principles of the dialogic approach of Finland. Is
Yes,
the English version of that?
yes. And it's a randomized controlled trial, which
Mhm.
in science means they have some teams that are using treatment as usual, and
Uh-huh.
then 5 teams in different trusts around London and around areas of the UK trained to use a dialogic approach. And after doing this study now over many years, they have the results about to be published. So watch the Lancet Psychiatry, or I'm going to say it'll probably be big news when it comes out. It's
Yeah.
supposed to be out in, July or August this
Oh,
summer.
really? As soon as that?
Yeah, that
Next
might be a
month.
good
Next
follow-up
month.
show.
Next
Yeah.
month. Very, very interesting. Okay.